Hi, I'm Kyle Wagner with Go Wags Baseball. We do a lot of instruction on a whole bunch of different areas. We do pitching and we do defense, specific to positions, but nothing generates quite the interest like hitting. We believe that we have a good system in place, and yet it contradicts much of what is out there. I want to try to take a little moment here and try to discuss the one primary aspect that we think is completely missed the mark, and that's with respect to what we refer to as an initial impulse. An initial impulse is the absolute most important moment in a baseball swing. It is when that front heel drives into the ground. So I get questions about, do you care how a player stands? And I usually answer no. The only thing that I truly care about is when you slam your front heel into the ground, are you giving yourself the best opportunity to be successful? So that's that initial impulse. And that is this moment in time right here. When we slam that heel into the ground, are we giving ourselves the best opportunity to be successful? Now that impulse has to put us in a position to handle a ball on the outside corner, handle a ball on the inside corner. And as a matter of fact, that impulse isn't restricted to just 17 inches. We want to make sure that impulse is covering 3 inches on the outside corner and 3 inches on the inside corner. So that impulse, when we slam our heel into the ground, in a perfect world, now not everyone's doing this, but in a perfect world, we want our stride to be right down the line. In a perfect world, we'd like our front foot to land at 45 degrees. We do not want to be closed. And in a perfect world, we do not want to be open. But we want to be right here. Now, everyone's different, so some guys can function a little bit more closed, and some guys have to open up a little bit. Regardless, I've got 23 inches to cover. When I slam my front heel into the ground, my hips should already be in motion. We want to start that train right here. That does a bunch of great things for us. By putting our hips in motion, it gives us a better chance to handle the inside pitch. By putting that train in motion, by engaging those hips early, I create a very authentic stretch right here. That early hip action creates a connection, hopefully all the way up into my barrel. It's not guaranteed. My hands might do some things to break away. But that action right there prepares me for success in the outside corner and the inside corner. Without that early hip action, without that dynamic first move, what we tend to see is players take their hands to the ball very early. Now another thing, that initial impulse has to be as forceful as possible. It is the moment in time you're preparing to move on a baseball. This impact position is an explosion. We see it as an explosion. We see it when we work with our 8-year-olds, our 15-year-olds, our 21-year-olds. Regardless, it doesn't matter. This impact is an absolute explosion. And in no way do we want to inhibit or prevent that force to be as powerful and as dynamic as possible. I have a vertical jump beside me. If I asked someone to jump up, and get as high as they possibly can, in every NFL scouting combine there is, those players jump with every ounce of fiber they have. They are trying to create as much height as possible. We as a hitter, doing the same thing, except we're doing it on a different plane. We're trying to get on plane with the pitch. So this moment in time right here has to be as dynamic and forceful as possible. Now look, I understand that there's change-ups and there's curveballs and there's sliders and there's things that challenge us. So we don't have the luxury of always doing the same thing every time. But right now I'm talking about a BP fastball, I'm talking about a ball on a tee. We're trying to create a dynamic movement that eventually will have to become a little flexible. But right now, what we see is we see players being taught to not be as dynamic in this position. And how do we know they're being taught not to be as dynamic in this position? Because if I'm an athlete and I put that in motion and this is as forceful as possible and I'm pushing in both directions and my hips are engaged and I'm trying to create a collision and I'm trying to cover a ball off the outside edge and I move as forcefully as possible without any constraints, I am going to slam into that ball. As I move down the line, I'm not extending with my arms. My arms are extending. I slam into the ground. I'm in a great position to launch. That barrel of that bat hopefully is right on my midline. I haven't thrown it out. That bat is right on my midline. And this move is dynamic. And it's on plane. And it's as powerful as everything I've got. As I launch that thing down the line, if I have great posture, that front ankle will roll. And as I move down that line, I might lose my balance. We call that a residual fall. If you're being instructed to maintain balance, and balance meaning after collision, I get to impact, I drive through a ball, and you're being told that this is a bad thing, I guarantee you, especially for the younger kids, especially for those kids that don't have the core strength, especially for those kids that are 4'7" or 5'2", they're not 6'3", and they're not developed, and they don't have core strength to immediately decelerate a swing. If you talk to those kids about losing their balance, you absolutely are going to inhibit their initial impulse. Absolutely, you're going to restrict how much force they slam into the ground with. Eventually, as you get a little bit taller, as your limbs get a little bit longer, as you start to develop a little bit more width, and you want to move as fast as possible and move through a ball, and you can decelerate as quickly as possible, and you want to hold that position, well, everyone's doing it, everyone's teaching it. Shouldn't say everyone, but more than we like, more than we're comfortable with. You want to talk to someone about balance, and you want to tell them not to do these things. At this point, we can't stop it because it seems so widespread. But with our young kids, with those kids that have aspirations of being great, those kids that want to play at the highest level, if we stop them, if we tell them to hold a finish, we are absolutely robbing them of their opportunity to create as much force as possible. So we talk about that initial impulse. We want to give ourselves a chance to be successful in and away. We want to turn as dynamically as possible. We want to understand that impact position is a collision. And as we move through that ball, we don't want anything to prevent our impact position, our collision, to be as forceful as possible. Please don't limit a player's impulse by telling them that after they crush that ball, they should have some preconceived idea of where they need to be at finish.